Do you ever feel like the characters in video games are all the same? After playing a variety of games over the past few years, the characters have all started to blend together. And with more variety to choose from than ever before, shouldn't it be the exact opposite? You think there'd be more interesting characters, more memorable story arcs, but rarely there ever is. But why is that? To constrain this video a bit, we're only going to be talking about Valorant, Apex, and Overwatch. I would like to do other games as well, but I don't want this video to be 2 hours long, so we'll stick with these 3. At the core of every game is the character design. It's how we as people feel connected to the characters in the game itself. Whether it's video games or movies or TV shows, we all want there to be little versions of ourselves on the screen, someone we can relate to in this lonely world. And for games to attract a wide player base, they need a variety of different characters with their own backgrounds and personalities. Someone to look at and think, that's who I am and that's who I strive to be. And to create these interesting, almost magnetic characters, video game character designers rely on something called character archetypes. A character archetype is a common character that represents a typical personality type or thing. You can think of character archetypes as cookie cutters. They're the outline of a type of person. For example, if you need a character to fit the experienced old soldier archetype, the game designers will take that cookie cutter archetype and just fill in the details. In Overwatch, they came up with Soldier 76, and in Valorant, they came up with Brimstone. And taking a closer look at both of these heroes, you start to notice a few trends. 1, they're both American. 2, they both have a military background. And 3, they are also white. But that's not important yet. If you look even deeper, who do these people represent in your own life? This character archetype is most likely a father figure, such as your dad, an uncle, or maybe a teacher. So naturally they have more masculine traits such as being strong, assertive, and leaders as defined by traditional American Western standards.
Be assertive!
And because of those associations you make with the character in game, the more believable the character is, and the more emotionally attached you become to this made-up character. And buy more skins. And jokes aside, these are all good things, and how you create good characters. But it can start to get messy. Now, as a fun exercise, let's imagine we are designing a game, and we want to make a character that throws knives. Super original, right? So instead of starting with the character archetype like last time, let's base our character around the fact that they really heckin' love knives. What do you think that person's personality and background would be? Let's just go whatever comes first to our minds. So most likely if they use knives, I imagine they are probably extremely precise, sneaky, and I like to think they're also sort of a badass. But while we're at it, let's just throw a stereotype in there. So I would also assume they're Asian, but more specifically Japanese. Now, let's look at what characters throw knives in common FPS shooters. Let's see. We got Jett from Valorant, Kiriko from Overwatch, and Wraith from Apex. Starting to notice a few trends here. Kiriko fits our outline to a T. She's precise, sneaky, and a badass, and also just happens to be Japanese. Okay. Let's take a look at Wraith. Precise, sneaky, yada yada yada. Okay, well, she isn't exactly technically Japanese, but the Apex universe takes place in a completely different planet than Earth, but it's implied that she is Asian or half white / half Asian. Plus she uses kunai, which are of Japanese heritage. This makes me think she's supposed to be like the Apex version of Japanese, or at the very least some form of Asian. And lastly, Jett, okay? Sneaky, precise, badass. Okay, makes sense. She isn't Japanese, but she is South Korean. But she also uses kunais, which are a Japanese weapon. So I would say she fits our description like 90%. And you can say they all fit the young, sneaky, impulsive ninja archetype, same as the old, experienced soldier. But why do the games feel the need to make the details exactly the same? Remember, our brainstorming session came from whatever came to our mind first, with very little effort and, a stereotype thrown into the mix. And this is the problem and is the crux of lazy character design. You do whatever comes to your mind, plus a stereotype. But the crazy thing is, these archetypes are only a few of the examples. If you do the spanning across each game, you've got essentially the same characters with the same archetypes. Junkrat and Octane, Omen and Reaper. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a bad thing these archetypes exist. In a way, they all fill a subconscious void of what we expect from these characters to make them realistic. And they offer us something familiar to latch onto. You can connect with these characters on a human level. And because of that connection, you might feel a more natural draw to that specific character. And then buy more skins. If you are, for example, a person who considers himself a bad boy, and you got an edgy demeanor in real life, you might find yourself relating to characters like Reaper from Overwatch or Omen from Valorant. In addition, it also makes it easier to intuitively understand what the heroes do, even if you've never played them or against them. For example, just looking at these two characters, what do you think they do? They both look like they are straight out of a Mad Max style toxic wasteland, and personality-wise, they look wild and crazy. Because of that, I immediately assume they use explosives as a big part of their kit. And ding ding ding, they both use grenades. I mean, it wouldn't make sense if a character like this just started launching icicles at you. And when you're playing a game, you don't actively think about this, but the context clues help your subconscious understand a game faster and easier. But a problem does arrive when each game fills the same archetypes with the exact same details. The games become uninspired and soulless. each character becomes a slight derivation of the last. So instead of getting interesting and inspired character designs, you just get the same ninja character recycled over and over. But I think an even deeper issue is the characters become downright stereotypes. If you take the archetype of the tormented evil person and compare them across games, you have Moira from Overwatch 2, Reyna from Valorant, and Catalyst from Apex. But it gets really weird. When you look deeper into the actual characters in the lore of the game, these characters are eerily similar, and not in a good way. Let's start by looking at Catalyst from Apex. She fits the archetype to a T. She has an evil, mean disposition, uses dark matter from the void as her form of weapon, but interestingly enough, she's also trans. And let's remember that as a little side note, okay? Next is Moira from Overwatch 2. Evil, check. Dark matter from the void as her weapon, check. And many assume Moira is supposed to be similar on the LGBTQ+ map as well, based off her wearing men's clothing in the cinematic, and her overall character design, although it's never been explicitly stated. I'm noticing a little bit of a trend here. Last is Reyna from Valorant. Dark matter from the void as her weapon, check. Well, technically she consumes souls, but it's stylistically the same. But is she somewhere on the LGBTQ map? Well, no, I couldn't find anything from the Valorant wiki. But this led me down a series of Google queries and fanfic pages I can never unsee. From what I can understand, while it's never been explicitly stated, many assume she is lesbian or bisexual based off her demeanor and voice lines, but I might be grasping at straws on this one here, so yeah. I would say she's a looser fit than the other two, but we're in dangerous territory here, so I'm gonna try and tread lightly. Sure, there are some other examples of LGBTQ+ representation, such as Symmetra from Overwatch or Raising Killjoy from Valorant, and Apex is generally pretty forward-thinking when it comes to this stuff. And representation in video games is a good thing. But what's not a good thing is boiling the LGBTQ+ character into a simple cookie-cutter stereotype as a bad girl who uses scary and dark matter energy to attack her prey. It feels lazy and reductive. But the point of this discussion is not to talk about LGBTQ+. It's not really a topic I know much about, so let's try to bring it back. But the character similarities are so striking across the board, it made me question how these characters are made. And then I had a theory. What if these gaming companies completely outsource their character design to another company? And then the specialized third-party companies create characters for every major class-based shooter on the market. It would make sense why it feels like we get the same characters recycled over and over again. I might be wearing a tinfoil hat with this one, but it seems plausible, right? So I dug into the gaming teams of each major game, just to see if this theory was true. And it turns out each company does in fact do their own character design. So that theory is a bust. But then why are they all so similar? Do they see a character that's a success in another game and decide they want to emulate that character in their own game? I mean, in a way that is the essence of creative work, taking an object you like, combining it with another object that you also like, and making something completely original. But then why do we end up with carbon copies of the same characters? And I think it comes down to what gets in the way of all creative work. Money and the fear of failure. And I can resonate with this. Why take a risk on a bold new character when you can take something that already works and tweak it slightly? There's a character from another game that people love, and it's backed by data, such as money from skin sales, millions of views on cinematics, and an outpour of praise from the gaming community. Why risk it all on something new? But in the end, this is how creative work dies, and why you get the same characters over and over. And even worse, by not creating truly original characters, these games unintentionally play into stereotypes that are, at the very least, boring and uninspired, and at the worst, reinforce existing stereotypes. Listen, I might have been overthinking this, but this has been bugging me for a long time, and once I took a second to pause to think about it, the similarities became more and more apparent. What do you all think? Does it bother you? Do you even care? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.